It's Monday, January 19th, 2026. Under investigation in Minnesota, where lynch mobs roam. Updates from other blue states and some smart commentary on AI from an unlikely source. Next on the AM Update. The Justice Department is investigating Minnesota officials, including Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, over an alleged conspiracy to impede federal immigration agents. A new development and escalation in the Trump administration's program on deportations. One of the sources, talking to CBS News, a U.S. official, said the investigation stems from statements that Walz and Frey have made about the thousands of immigration and customs enforcement officers and Border Patrol agents deployed to the Minneapolis region in recent weeks. Tim Walz also prepped the National Guard yet again over the weekend. In Minneapolis, literal lynch mobs roamed the streets looking for supporters of immigration and customs enforcement. That is sound from a video where a mob of individuals surrounded one activist, Jake Lang, who I am not a huge fan of. Nevertheless, it was a veritable lynch mob. They were trying to target anybody perceived to be pro-MAGA or pro-immigration and customs enforcement. Pretty much just any normal-looking dude was accosted on some areas of Minneapolis streets over the weekend.
Where are you going? Huh? Are you ICE?
Yeah, you can hear this immigration and customs enforcement just yelling, screaming at this man who's just trying to mind his own business. He's not wearing any MAGA paraphernalia or ICE paraphernalia, and yet he's getting screamed at. A number of those videos surfaced online over the weekend. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem was interviewed by Margaret Brennan, one of the dumbest people on television on CBS's Face the Nation, to talk about whom the Trump administration is targeting.
What's the breakdown of the percentage of those who you have in custody who have actually committed a criminal offense versus just the civil infraction?
Every single individual has committed a crime, but 70% of them have committed or have charges against them on violent crimes and crimes that they are charged with or have been convicted of that have come from other countries that are here illegally, first of all, and then they have committed a criminal act while they've been here or in their home countries as well.
But it's not 70%.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is.
70% of everyone
you guys keep changing your percentage. You pick and choose what numbers you think work, but that is the facts, is that 70% of the people that we have detained have charges against them or have been convicted of charges, and they need to be brought to justice. And we're going to keep doing that no matter how much you guys keep lying and don't tell the public the truth. It absolutely is that these law enforcement officers are out there every day doing the work to protect the American people, and they will keep doing that because they believe in enforcing the law, which is exactly what President Trump has charged them with.
No backing down from the deportation program on one hand, and on the other hand, an investigation for Minnesota leaders that better be followed through on from the Department of Justice. I'm not holding my breath. We go from that to Greenland. More than half of a dozen European countries warned in a joint statement on Sunday that tariff threats over Greenland undermine transatlantic relations as the White House seeks to pressure allies into a deal to acquire the Arctic island. A statement issued by Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and the United Kingdom said the countries remain committed to strengthening Arctic security and are prepared to engage in dialogue grounded in respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. President Trump made a threat. That statement came after the threat on Truth Social, where he says he's going to impose a 10% tariff on the 8 countries unless a deal is reached for what he called the complete and total purchase of Greenland. Trump said the 10% tariff would go into effect February 2nd and could rise to 25% on June 1st. So we've gone from building a wall and making Mexico pay for it to give us Greenland, and we're going to make you pay for it as well. Let's go here to Congress, where Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer laid out one of his top priorities if Democrats are back in power after the midterms.
If you look at the budget actually we're working on right now, and we'll have the T-HUD budget, transportation and HUD budget, we restore most of the cuts and even go higher than previous years on many of the programs that DOGE slashed. When I met our nominee for HUD secretary, then he was nominee, he talked a nice game. But he doesn't seem to have the clout to make those views prevail over the DOGE people, over the cut people. But we have worked really hard in the budget and gotten bipartisan support to increase these amounts and undo a lot of the cuts, which are essential.
Chuck Schumer saying if Democrats get back into power in Congress after the midterms, the tepid cuts Republicans made via DOGE, those are all going to be coming back. We go now to a blue state checkup. We go to Virginia, a fresh blue state, or at least completely blue state now, where Abigail Spanberger, the new governor, who is a total and complete psychopath, her first act as governor was to repeal a Governor Glenn Youngkin executive order stating that the state will comply with immigration and customs enforcement.
Executive order rescinds executive order number 47. State and local law enforcement should not be required to divert their limited resources to enforce federal civil immigration laws. It is a responsibility of federal law enforcement. Virginia state and local law enforcement officers must be able to focus on their core responsibilities, investigating crime and community policing.
So Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, her first act as governor, making sure she does her darndest to facilitate the illegal alien agenda and invasion. Meanwhile, the state's new lieutenant governor, Ghazala Hashmi, well, check this out.
Are you prepared to take the oath of office?
Yes, I am.
Please place your left hand on the Quran, raise your right hand, and repeat after me.
You heard that right. Virginia's new lieutenant governor, Ghazala Hashmi, sworn in on a Quran. Meanwhile, President Trump on Truth Social lashing out at Indiana Republicans, saying he's working to oust Indiana Senate Majority Leader Rod Frey after he failed to pass redistricting, which could have given Republicans a 9-0 congressional map in the Hoosier state. He said this on the tails of, yet again, more developments from Virginia. Their House of Delegates is indeed moving forward with a redistricting map that I believe would leave Republicans with one congressional seat in Virginia. We go now to Illinois, where Governor Augustus Gloop, a.k.a. Governor J.B. Pritzker, just signed a new law into effect in the land of Lincoln. Here's WSTV.
With the governor's signature, nearly 2.2 million people are now eligible to have their criminal records sealed in what it hopes opens up opportunities for those looking for a second chance. It's official. The Clean Slate Act is law, which means law enforcement agencies are now required to automatically seal eligible criminal records every 6 months, and eliminating the need for individuals with prior convictions to navigate lengthy court procedures.
And this here is going to change my life completely.
Bernita Davenport McWhite says her criminal record has kept her from finding places to live, even though she's done her time.
I was able to find a private landlord that was willing to sit down and have a conversation regarding my background to really get to know me.
Now she awaits getting her own record sealed as she continues to advocate for people like her, finding support from state leaders.
They deserve a track to run on. And the story of that humanity, the idea that people have to audition for their humanity has to stop.
The law does exclude convictions for sexual violence against minors, DUIs, reckless driving, cruelty to animals, and serious violent crimes, including anything that would qualify for sex offender registration. Still, the state believes the law will play a critical role on the economy.
This law will unlock $4.7 billion in lost wages. And this law reduces crime. Study after study tells us that when formerly incarcerated individuals have access to resources, jobs and housing and education, recidivism rates go down significantly.
Yeah, this is a bad idea. Self-evidently bad idea. That story courtesy of WLS-TV in Chicago. For every story like you just heard from the woman who said, I did my time and I can't find a job, there's probably 100, 150, 200 cases where you probably want to know whether or not somebody was in jail and what they were in jail for. Yes, it's a correctional facility, but not all people within serving time in a correctional facility are necessarily corrected. And I think employers have a right to know what indeed their prospective employees got up to in previous lives. Now, of course, we all love a comeback story. We all love a story of restitution and overcoming adversity. But this is going to be used and abused, and I think that is self-evident. And why do all of these blue states seem like they just hate truth, justice, and the American way? Well, let's let Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar explain.
The one place where we thought we would never experience this is the U.S. states.
Yep, that's the way they all think. They hate America. It's the U.S. GD states. Happy Monday morning to you. When we come back, commentary, some smart commentary, I think, on artificial intelligence from an unlikely source. Also, the Canadian missile crisis. That's coming up next. Well, this is not good news.
I think the biggest security threat to Canada is China.
We're heartened by the leadership of President Xi Jinping and the speed with which our relationship has progressed in recent months. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
That is Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. The very first clip you heard there was from April 17th of 2025 during a debate for Prime Minister in Canada before their election, stating in no uncertain terms, China, Freudian slip, China is the biggest security threat to the Canadians. And then just last week, January 15th, praising Chairman Xi during a trip to Beijing for his leadership and his speed for developing that relationship so that they can embark upon a new world order. So we've got our northern neighbor aligning with the Chinese Communist Party, likely, I'm sure there are other factors as well, likely just to spite the United States. One of the agreements coming out of this meeting in Beijing is that China will now be exporting electric vehicles to Canada, which, of course, electric vehicles, EVs, filled with cameras, obviously probably a surveillance tool of the Chinese Communist Party. That's going to be on our continent, just north of us. Mark Carney, Canadian Prime Minister, went from Beijing to meet with Xi Jinping to Qatar to meet with the Qataris as well. Now, we had a delegation just last year, including President Trump, meeting with the Qataris as well. But going from the CCP to Qatar on the same swing, the same trip, that says a lot, doesn't it? And now here's this interesting commentary on artificial intelligence from an unlikely source. Actor Ben Affleck was on the Joe Rogan Experience to share his views on how artificial intelligence could or maybe won't actually shake up our everyday lives.
What I see is that, for example, if you try to get ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini to write you something, it's really and it's because by its nature it goes to the mean, to the average, and it's not reliable, and I just can't stand to see what it writes. Now, it's a useful tool if you're a writer and you're going, what's the thing? I'm trying to set something up, or somebody sends someone a letter but it's delayed 2 days and it can give you some examples of that. I actually don't think it's very likely that it's going to be able to write anything meaningful, and in particular that it's going to be making movies like from whole cloth, like Tilly Norwood. Like, that's bull. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's not. I think it turns out the technology is not progressing in exactly the same way they sort of presented it. And really, what it is going to be a tool, just like sort of visual effects. And yeah, it needs to have language around it. You need to protect your name and likeness. You can do that. You can watermark it. Those laws already exist. I can't sell your picture for money. I can't. You can sue me, period. It kind of feels to me like the thing we were talking about earlier, where there's a lot more fear because we have the sense this existential dread. It's going to wipe everything out. Right. But that actually runs counter, in my view, to what history seems to show, which is adoption is slow, it's incremental. I think a lot of that rhetoric comes from people who are trying to justify valuations around companies where they go, we're going to change everything. In 2 years, there's going to be no more work. Right. Well, the reason they're saying that is because they need to ascribe a valuation for investment that can warrant the CapEx spend they're going to make on these data centers, with the argument that, like, as soon as we do the next model, it's going to scale up, it can be 3 times as good. except that actually ChatGPT 5 about 25% better than ChatGPT 4 and costs about 4 times as much in the way of electricity and data. So those, when they say that's like plateauing, the early AI, the line went up very steeply, and it's now sort of leveling off. I think it's because, and yes, it'll get better, but it's going to be really expensive to get better. And a lot of people were like, this, we want ChatGPT 4, because it turned out like the vast majority of people who use AI are using it to as companion bots to chat with at night. And so there's no work, there's no productivity, there's no value to it. I would argue there's also not a lot of social value to getting people to focus on an AI friend who's, telling you that you're great and listening to everything you say and being sycophantic. But that's sort of a side issue. I think for this particular purpose, the way I see the technology and what it's good at and what it's not, it's going to be good at filling in all the places that are expensive and burdensome and they make it harder to do it. And it's always going to rely fundamentally on the human artistic aspects of it.
That is actor Ben Affleck on the Joe Rogan Experience. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. I think that's some smart commentary, and I think if you've used any level of AI, generative AI, for basically anything for any extended period of time, I think what you hear from Ben Affleck there is abundantly true. There's just kind of this middling push from all of these chatbots, even Grok on X. They try to find the average take on any given subject. It's just an amalgamation. A camel, if you will, if you want to use an artistic term or lack of artistic term. And essentially, Ben Affleck's contention there is that AI, it has to be the end of the world, it has to be the new industrial revolution in order to justify spending all of this capital investment on it. That's why the promises are so over the top. They have to be over the top in order to justify all of these companies who are expending vast amounts of capital on these AI projects. However, I could make the case that AI, at least in the West, has already won and is running humanity. Just not for the reason its greatest opponents and critics think. This is a poll quote from a piece by Cedric Durand at Sidecar, talking about the future of AI in the near term and long term. Quote, when AI has infiltrated work processes to the point that exit costs are prohibitive, the customer base will be unable to escape and coerced into paying up. The world will be hooked on AI and the tech firms will collect handsome profits. Regardless of whether or not artificial intelligence is actually productive, brings to bear a new industrial revolution type of leap of productivity. You could make the case, both from what you heard Ben Affleck argue there, the justification, the self-reinforcing justification for spending vast amounts of capital on artificial intelligence, and by the fact that if you try to divest yourself from AI assets, it's going to be prohibitively expensive to do so. Essentially, what we have created is a self-justifying loop, closed loop, if you will. We need AI because it's going to change everything. We get up to our eyeballs in investments in AI. Maybe it changed some things, maybe it didn't, but it's too expensive to get rid of now, so we're just going to keep going, regardless of whether it's actually helping us be more productive or not. Essentially, AI might have already conquered humanity, at least in the West, just not the way that people, or at least its opponents, have said so. Not in the Skynet type of way. In the very much human, feeble way. Where we want to promise the moon, deliver whatever, and then once you've delivered whatever, and you're up to your eyeballs in whatever it is AI you're getting into, it's too expensive to get out. That's weird. I keep thinking this bubble is going to pop. It hasn't yet, but we shall see. That's going to do it for Monday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.